They say that true friends are the family you choose. From the moment we learn what friendship means, we are taught that it should be safe, mutual, and loyal. It is our chosen tribe, our support system, and the bond that is supposed to make life lighter. But what happens when that bond becomes the very thing that slowly erases you? Right now, across America and the world, there is a silent pattern. It's happening in millions of lives. In text threads that suddenly go cold. In coffee dates that leave you feeling drained. In friendships where you give everything and receive nothing. Yet it remains one of the most invisible wounds we carry. People are recognizing a painful truth. They keep attracting the same type of toxic friend over and over again. To the outside world, it looks like drama. Someone being too sensitive, too demanding, unable to maintain friendships. But if you look closer, behind the pattern, there is rarely a simple story of bad luck. Instead, there is a profound, complex psychology of repetition. Why do some people become magnets for toxic friendships? Is it coincidence? Or is it a blueprint written in childhood that keeps bringing the same pain in different faces? In this video, we are diving deep into the psychology of people who keep attracting toxic friends. We will explore the invisible pattern that most people can't see, uncover the childhood conditioning that creates a broken picker, and analyze why your nervous system keeps choosing familiar pain over unfamiliar safety. If you've cut off 3 best friends in 5 years and still don't understand why this keeps happening to you, this is the explanation you've been looking for. This is the truth behind the pattern. Let's begin. The pattern almost never begins with a dramatic betrayal. It begins with erosion. Slow, quiet, almost invisible to everyone except the person living through it. For months, even years, the friendship looks normal from the outside. You laugh together, you share secrets, you appear in each other's photos. But beneath the surface, something is wearing down, layer by layer. Not because of one catastrophic betrayal, but because of hundreds of small ones that accumulate like sediment at the bottom of a river. Psychologists call this micro-betrayal. The plans they cancel last minute, always with a good excuse. The conversation that somehow always circles back to them. The moment you share something vulnerable and they change the subject. The boundary you set that gets pushed just a little further each time. Individually, these moments seem minor, something you can brush off. Together, they become a psychological climate. And over time, your body begins to respond before your mind does. You hesitate before texting them. You rehearse what you'll say, editing yourself to avoid their judgment. You notice you're smaller around them, quieter, constantly managing their emotions while yours go unnoticed. What you once called friendship dynamics becomes chronic anxiety woven into the relationship. This is the erosion most people never see. The pattern doesn't happen because you suddenly stop caring. It happens because you have gradually run out of capacity, out of energy to be the one who always reaches out, out of hope that they'll ever show up for you the way you show up for them, out of space to keep absorbing the same small wounds. Before you recognize the pattern comes the exhaustion, and before the exhaustion come years of being slowly worn down. This is where toxic friendships begin. Not with cruelty, but with depletion. From the outside, the ending of a toxic friendship often looks abrupt, like you woke up one morning, got upset about something small, and decided to ghost. Friends describe it as out of nowhere. Mutual acquaintances say, but you were just hanging out last week. But that's the illusion of the volcano effect. A volcanic eruption looks sudden only to those who weren't paying attention to the pressure building beneath the surface. Lava doesn't appear overnight. It forms quietly, silently, over months and years. The mountain holds it in until it can't. Toxic friendships work exactly the same way. The final argument, the last cancelled plan, the comment that finally broke you, those are never the true cause. They're simply the moment the internal pressure becomes unbearable. The final trigger in a long chain of ignored boundaries, dismissed feelings, and unreciprocated care. To the friend, it feels like you cut me off because of this. But to you it sounds like, no, I'm stepping back because this has been happening for 2 years. The break looks sudden only because the suffering was silent. The pattern is rarely a reaction. It is a culmination. a release of years of one-sided effort that could no longer be sustained. And once the volcano erupts, once you finally walk away, you swear you'll never let it happen again. But then, 6 months later, a year later, you find yourself in the exact same dynamic with a completely different person, different name, different face, same pain. And that's when the real question emerges: why does this keep happening to me? Long before you chose your first friend, you were already being trained on what friendship should feel like. In healthy families, children learn that relationships are reciprocal, that their needs matter. That love doesn't have to be earned through constant service. But in dysfunctional or emotionally neglectful families, something very different gets encoded. You learn that your role is to manage other people's emotions, that your worth comes from being useful, that asking for support makes you a burden. If you grew up as the parentified child, the one who had to be the emotional caretaker for your own parents, you learned that love means giving endlessly and needing nothing in return. You became skilled at reading rooms, at anticipating needs, at shrinking yourself to make space for everyone else. And when you entered the world of friendships, you brought that blueprint with you. You became the friend who always listens but never shares, the one who shows up in crisis but disappears when things are good because you don't know how to exist outside of being needed. If you were the scapegoat, the one blamed for family tension you didn't create, you learned that you have to work harder to earn love, that you're somehow too much and not enough at the same time. You became the friend who over-apologizes, who accepts blame for things that aren't your fault, who tolerates disrespect because deep down you believe that's what you deserve. These aren't conscious choices. They are survival adaptations. Patterns your nervous system learned when you were too young to question them. And here's what makes the pattern so insidious. Toxic people can sense these adaptations, not maliciously, not always consciously, but energetically. They can sense when someone has been trained to give more than they receive, when someone won't push back, when someone's boundaries are suggestions, not walls. And so, without either of you realizing it, you keep attracting the takers, the people who need an audience, not a friend, the ones who want support but can't offer it, and you keep choosing them because emotionally they feel like home. This is the childhood blueprint, the invisible pattern that lives beneath your conscious awareness, drawing you toward the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. You're not attracting toxic friends because you're broken. You're attracting them because you were trained to believe that this is what friendship looks like. Some wounds bleed, others don't. And those are often the ones that shape us the most. Emotional one-sidedness is quiet. It leaves no obvious scars, no clear moment you can point to and say, that's when I knew. Instead, it is defined by what never happens. The friend who never asks how you're really doing. The one who dominates every conversation. The support that flows in one direction and never returns. Growing up without emotional reciprocity teaches you something devastating. That your feelings are either too much or not worth noticing. That sharing your struggles makes you needy. That friendship is something you earn by being endlessly available while requiring nothing in return. And as adults, these same individuals often become the ones who seem strong, independent, unbothered, while carrying a private loneliness that never fully goes away. This is the empty well. You keep going back to certain friends, hoping just once they'll ask about you first. Maybe this time they'll remember what you told them last week. Maybe this time they'll show up when you need them, the way you've shown up for them 100 times. Maybe this time the friendship will feel mutual, but every interaction ends the same. A dry bucket, a hollowed chest, a familiar disappointment. Most people don't leave toxic friends because of what those friends did. They leave because of what those friends could never give. The curiosity about your inner world that was never there. The reciprocity that friendship requires to survive. Because returning again and again to an empty well eventually becomes a form of self-abandonment. For many, recognizing the pattern is not about rejecting friendship. It is about finally choosing to stop thirsting for a kind of connection that has never been there. The pain of what happened can be healed. But the pain of what never happened takes longer, because you're grieving a version of friendship you never got to experience. The kind where both people show up, where vulnerability flows both ways, where you can have needs without apology. If the pattern seems obvious from the outside, the staying is even harder to understand. Why do people endure years, sometimes decades, of one-sided friendships before stepping away? The answer lies in two powerful psychological forces: trauma bonding and the hope cycle. Trauma bonding doesn't just happen in romantic relationships. It happens anywhere that moments of pain are intertwined with moments of warmth. They cancel on you 3 times in a row, then send a heartfelt text about how much you mean to them. They ignore your struggles for weeks, then show up with a gift and an apology. They make everything about themselves for months, then have one deep conversation where they finally ask about you. The nervous system becomes conditioned to confuse inconsistency with intimacy. You start believing that if you just give a little more, wait a little longer, prove your loyalty one more time, you'll finally unlock the version of the friend you met at the beginning. And that is where the hope cycle begins. You remember who they were when you first became friends, before they got stressed, before life got complicated, before the friendship became work. You hold on to that memory like a lifeline, convinced that person is still in there, buried under circumstance. So you make excuses. They're going through something. They're busy. They're not good at staying in touch. They don't mean to take and never give. You rationalize. You minimize. You wait for the breakthrough moment that never comes. The hope cycle keeps you waiting. It keeps you forgiving. It keeps you returning to friendships that slowly dismantle your sense of self. Hope isn't the problem. It's that the hope is always about who they could be, not who they consistently are. Many people stay in toxic friendships because they were taught that leaving makes them disloyal, that protecting themselves makes them selfish, that wanting reciprocity means they're high maintenance. So they endure, they shrink, they perform the role of the perfect friend while their own needs go unmet, year after year. And here's the cruelest part of the pattern. The takers rarely see themselves as takers. In their mind, you're the strong one, the one who has it together, the one who doesn't need support. They don't realize that you've simply learned to hide your needs so well that you've become invisible even to people who claim to know you. When someone finally walks away from a toxic friendship, it's not because they stopped caring, it's because they realized the cycle wasn't going to change, and staying meant losing pieces of themselves, one conversation at a time. When people hear the phrase cutting off a friend, they often imagine a drastic emotional decision, an act of anger or punishment. But in reality, distance is rarely a declaration of hostility. It is a strategy of survival. And it doesn't always come in one form. Some choose the slow fade, gradually reducing contact, letting texts go unanswered a little longer, declining invitations without explanation. It's a way of saying, I can't do this anymore, but I don't have the energy to explain why. Others use grey rock, a method designed to minimize emotional engagement. They become neutral, predictable, unreactive, because reacting is exactly what fuels the old patterns of one-sided emotional labor. Grey rock isn't coldness, it's self-protection. And then, after years of trying, after every lesser boundary has been ignored, some choose a full cutoff. Not because they hate the person, but because every attempt to create balance was met with resistance, guilt-tripping, or complete dismissal. The friendship ends not with a confrontation, but with silence. A text left unread, a call that doesn't come, an absence that speaks louder than words ever could. Psychologically, choosing distance activates grief, relief, and guilt all at once. You mourn the friendship you thought you had. You feel guilty for wanting peace, and yet you breathe easier when the constant disappointment finally stops. It is a deeply conflicted decision, one made only after every other attempt has failed. Distance is not rejection. It is clarity. It is the moment someone says, I can't change you, but I can stop letting this hurt me. And for many, that distance, whether gentle or absolute, is the first time they finally feel like they can breathe. When someone steps away from a toxic friendship, the world often assumes the hardest part is the separation itself. But the deeper pain, the part almost no one talks about, is the grief that follows. Ambiguous loss is a unique kind of mourning. It happens when the person you're grieving is still alive, still posting on social media, still going to the same places, yet emotionally unreachable. There is no funeral, no final goodbye, no ritual to help you move forward, just a lingering ache, a question mark where closure should be. You're grieving not only the friendship you lost, but the friendship you never actually had. The version where they cared as much as you did, where effort was mutual, where you felt seen, not just convenient. And letting go of that imagined friendship, the one you kept hoping would appear if you just tried harder, can feel like losing them twice. Then come the reminders, the group chats you're no longer part of, the inside jokes you used to share, seeing their name on a mutual friend's post and feeling that strange, hollow pang. Everyone else seems wrapped in easy connection while you're navigating a complicated, invisible grief that no one knows how to comfort. And yet, even in grief, there is relief. The anxiety is gone. The mental load of managing someone else's emotions has lifted. Your nervous system finally exhales. But that relief often comes with guilt, as if choosing peace makes you the bad friend, as if protecting yourself is somehow a betrayal. This is the emotional cost of recognizing the pattern. The heartbreak of choosing your well-being over a history that was never as mutual as you believed. It is not easy. It is not simple. But for many, it is the only way to stop carrying a weight they were never meant to hold. And healing begins the moment you realize you can mourn what you lost and still move toward the friendships you deserve. For many people, recognizing the pattern is not the end of a story. It is the beginning of a life they were never allowed to fully live. Because once the fog clears and the guilt softens, something unexpected begins to emerge. A sense of self that had been buried under years of people-pleasing, over-functioning, and emotional self-abandonment. Reclaiming your identity is not a sudden revelation. It's a slow, tender rebuilding. You learn to ask questions you were never permitted to ask. What do I actually need in a friendship? What does reciprocity feel like? What kind of people make me feel safe, not anxious? And perhaps for the first time, your friendships are not built on fear of abandonment or performance of worthiness. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for having needs. You begin to trust that the right people won't require you to disappear in order to be loved. Healing also means breaking the generational cycle. Many people who step away from toxic friendships do so not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. This ends with me. They refuse to pass on the patterns, the overgiving, the boundarylessness, the belief that love must be earned through endless service. They begin to befriend themselves with gentleness. And when they eventually open themselves to new connections, they offer a version of presence they never received. And along this path, something beautiful happens. You discover the concept of chosen family, friends who actually reciprocate, people who remember what you told them, connections where you don't have to perform or prove. People who don't love you because of what you do for them, but because they genuinely see you, value you, and choose you. This is where the pattern breaks. Not when you walk away from the toxic friends you once had, but when you begin building the friendships your spirit always needed. Reclaiming your identity is an act of courage. Creating chosen family is an act of liberation. And together, they form the foundation of a life no longer defined by patterns of pain, but by the possibility of real, mutual, life-giving connection. In the end, breaking the pattern is not truly about cutting people off. It's about redefining what friendship means. For some, friendship is history and loyalty. For others, it becomes safety and reciprocity. Both truths can exist at the same time. Walking away doesn't mean you are cold or unforgiving. It means you stopped returning to the empty well just because you were told loyalty requires it. It means you chose peace over performance, clarity over confusion, healing over history. And that choice, though painful, is profoundly brave. As you move forward, you are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to build a life shaped not by the patterns of your past, but by the love you choose, the boundaries you deserve, and the friendships you're finally giving yourself permission to receive. And if this video made you feel seen, even in a small way, I want you to know you're not alone. There are thousands of people walking this same quiet, complicated path. If you'd like to stay connected, consider subscribing. We explore the hidden corners of the human heart here every week. And if you feel comfortable, share your experience or reflections in the comments below. Someone else might find strength in your story. Take care of yourself. You deserve friendships that feel like home.